Hello, children. 'Tis I, homeless man who sits in your class. You just caught me reading the book, A Farewell to Arms, by Ernest Hemingway. After reading this book, I realized that the life of Ernest Hemingway really influenced the plot of this book. In fact, you can even say that... Actually, everybody knows, in A Farewell to Arms, it's actually influenced by the events of World War itself. Jimmy, a little turd stain. In fact, the deeper connections within Ernest Hemingway's wartime life was what influenced the plot. I'll be back. Okay, now we're going to start looking at the life of Ernest Hemingway in comparison to the plot of the book. The similarities between the main character, Frederick Henry, and Ernest Hemingway are too similar to be just a coincidence. For instance, they were both ambulance drivers for the Italian infantry in World War I, they were both shot in the right knee, they both received the Medal of Honor, and they both met their love affairs at the war while hospitalized. Now here's where things get a little different, because the love relationship in the book is not exactly the same as Hemingway's. Hemingway met Agnes in Milan, but unfortunately lost her to an Italian man. We'll call him Matthew, because who likes Matthew anyways? Whereas Frederick and Catherine had a strong relationship, and when a boy and a girl really like each other, they do the no pants dance, and boom! Got yourself a baby. But in this case, that wasn't the case, because Catherine died due to a C-section, and the baby was a stillborn. And spoilers, I'm sorry. I'm not really sorry. Although it may not seem like it, this is a good example of how Hemingway's personal life affects the characters. This is because Hemingway is showing us what could have been in his relationship. Also, the death of Catherine emphasizes Hemingway's viewpoints on how death ends life before you have a chance to live it. They both share many personal qualities as well, such as their morbid nature and their obsession for war. In Hemingway's life, he fought in more than one world war, and Frederick Henry could not leave the war for one instant. In the end of the novel, when Frederick and Catherine desert the war, Catherine tells Frederick to stop talking about the war. Frederick replies with, "It's very hard, there's no place to drop it." This can also be seen as a way to promote Hemingway's manliness, because Hemingway did many manly things in his time, such as fishing, boxing, was a Nazi submarine hunter, and a war hero. Hemingway didn't really enjoy the war, in fact he actually hated it. This hate that Hemingway has for his experiences in the war can be seen through the setting, and how... Actually, historically, everybody knows that during the World War, it was very rainy. Okay, 1, why are you breathing my air? 2, rain actually symbolizes something different in this story. This is because when something bad or sad is about to happen to the main character, Rain's all like, "Hey man, something bad's gonna happen, so I'm coming down to warn ya." For instance, when Catherine Barclay, the main love interest of the book, describes what she sees in Rain, she says she sees herself dead in it. Here Hemingway is showing us how rain in the novel symbolizes death and how it constantly pours. Oh, and by the way, Jimmy, I heard that the Idiot Convention is starting in 2 hours, so you can go now. Oh yeah? Well, you can't make me. What am I doing with my life? Hemingway also instills his morbid viewpoints of war in Frederick. This can be seen in the morbid diction Hemingway uses, because when Frederick is told to retreat, Frederick says, "If there's a retreat, how are the wounded evacuated? They are not. They take as many as they can, and they leave the rest." The way Hemingway talks about the rest degrades the importance of one's life, therefore inserting Hemingway's conscience to that of Frederick Henry's. To sum things up, in a sense, A Farewell to Arms can be considered an autobiography because of the similarities. Now, why do these arguments matter? Well, the literal connections of Ernest's life give Frederick a plot and places the main character within the hardships of war. The setting, although historically accurate, shows how even when you think it's over, it never is, and you just gotta sugar cookie it. The obsession for war that Ernest shares with Frederick is to show that how even in the hardships of war, he never loses his manhood. Frederick's relationship in comparison to Henry shows that what you might want may only be just a fantasy. Hemingway's morbid nature of the war that he shares with Henry is a representation of the overall theme that war is meaningless in the end.
Not a friendship that was renewed every year, but over many years at different times.
Yes.
And I saw him in the last year in which he was still entirely in control of himself, again, quite a lot. But we never discussed bullfighting because we, except on the subject of Ordóñez, we disagreed profoundly on too many points. And he thought he invented it, you know.
Yes.
He really did think he invented it.
Yes. Of course,
maybe he did.
His book, of course, is still
it's superb.
a magnificent
and it's a superb book. He's a great artist. My admiration for... I was enormously fond of him as a man, too, because the thing you never get from his books was his humor.
Yes.
There's hardly a word of humor in a Hemingway book because he's so tense and solemn and dedicated to what is true and good and all that. But when he relaxed, he was riotously funny.
In conclusion, this presentation shows that it uses its very concise... I actually used rhetoric? Who says rhetoric? What?